we're losing, you know? Turn your Bibles, if you would, to Nehemiah chapter 1. Nehemiah chapter 1 this morning. We're going to start a new book of study, and we're going to finish our Vision Sunday that we started in the 1st of January. This is Vision Sunday 2.0. At the end, we'll give you an idea of what's going on there. This is a new book of study. I'm really excited about it. We're going to start by reading chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, before we pray and take our seats. So Nehemiah chapter 1, starting in verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hackalia. Now it happened in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Susa, the citadel, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came to me with certain men from Judah. And I asked him concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. And I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Let's pray. Father, as we gather together and we begin looking at this amazing book, and as we look at what the future holds for the body here at Calvary, I pray that you would speak to our hearts. Individually, Lord, that you would raise up the leader within each and every one of us. And God, that you would bring us together in unity for the work that's before us. I pray, God, that you would fill up my inadequacy, Lord Jesus, and you take the vision, Lord, as taken from the survey, Lord, and from the prayers of the elders. And Lord, that if it's your vision, it would grow wings and fly. And would be those things, Lord, that we feel that you've called us to do. And your plan would be fulfilled as only you can. God, by your Spirit, guide us and direct us. We'll leave it open to you because you're the God of the heavens and earth. You're the God who keeps his promises. And you're the God that will guide us in what is right and true. So we pray these things in your holy name. Amen. Go and take a seat. I got a lot for you this morning. I'll try to be fast without being so fast you can't understand what I'm saying, which is usually what happens, and probably why first service was sort of all excited and sort of all going like this at the end. So we'll see how it goes. We need to set the stage for this new book of study. We'll get back to the vision at the very close of our study today and all those survey results and things like that. But right now, let's talk about Nehemiah a little uncovered. Let's set the stage so we see where we're at and we can understand this text that we'll be in for the next 13 weeks or so. About 1,000 years after the time of Moses, and around 400 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, the nation of Israel and the Jewish people were in a desperate state. Their nations had been destroyed. When I say nations, you have to understand that Israel was divided into two kingdoms, the northern and the southern. The northern kingdom, the Jewish nation of Israel, was carried away by the Assyrians. And a few years later, the southern kingdom, a kingdom that was now called Judah, was carried away by the Babylonians. The city of Jerusalem had been completely conquered by the Babylonians, and the once unparalleled beauty and magnificent structure known as Solomon's Temple had been completely destroyed. When the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem, they deported almost everyone from the city and the region out of the area for some 70 years. And Jerusalem was a veritable ghost town. Now, think about it. If you had a place like this, Mount Pleasant, think about how fast the weeds grow in Mount Pleasant in the summertime. 70 years without mowing the weeds. Okay, that's what Jerusalem looked like. It was torn up, you know? And it had the potential at that time, after those 70 years, to end up like all the other cities around there, the cities that were conquered by the Israelites, the cities that were conquered by God, just a pile of stones and rubble that would just be sitting there. It would have been completely forgotten in history. When the Jews were deported to Babylon, they began to start their own lives. They'd been there for a while, right? They made homes for themselves, business for themselves. They settled down. And although they still followed the God of their fathers, they did it from Babylon. They did it from there. They did it from the outskirts with no real desire to return to the land God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, especially the second or third generation, because they'd never been there. They were born and raised in Babylon. Some of these faithful Jews were raised up in places of prominence within the government. And so they were even more important. They were deported over to Babylon, but then they became these great leaders. People like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego became leaders in Babylon. Esther was made the queen of the Persian Empire, which is the empire we'll be looking at today. But after 70 years of captivity in Babylon, they were given the opportunity to return to their land. After 70 years, that's basically 2 generations, they were told, hey, you can go back if you want. 2 to 3 million Jews were deported out of the land. How many returned, do you think? 50,000. About 2%. Out of 2 to 3 million that were deported, about 50,000 said, yeah, we'd like to go back to the land of our fathers. We'd like to go back there. But they did return, and when they did return, those 2%, in the days of Ezra, they rebuilt the temple. It wasn't as great as Solomon's was, but there was a temple there now. And so they had a spiritual foundation for Israel once again. After 15 years, the book of Ezra ends. And almost 100 years after the first captives came back to the promised land, some 150 years after the city of Jerusalem was destroyed, the walls of the city of Jerusalem were still rubble. They were still just torn down. Before this, the citizens of Jerusalem had tried to rebuild the wall, but they hadn't been able to before the book of Nehemiah that we get to today. In Ezra chapter 4, verses 6 through 23, we're told that they tried, and we see that some 75 years before the text we read today, they tried to rebuild the walls, but they were stopped by their enemies. And they were stopped over and over again by their enemies, so much so that they thought that this obstacle of the enemies would never be able to be overcome. So they just laid in ruin, and the people just stayed in trouble. There was nothing they could do. That is until the namesake of this book that we're going to study came onto the scene. Nehemiah is one of the most dynamic leaders and one of the most enigmatic figures in the entire Old Testament. An enigma is a mystery, something that's just not, there's something weird about this dude. And as we read about Nehemiah, we'll kind of see he's this great leader, but he's also kind of quirky, right? He's also kind of set off by himself. He's just not, nobody can really read him perfectly, and you never exactly know what he's going to do, except for the fact that he's going to be following God in whatever he does. I enjoy this book so much, the book of Nehemiah, that I read it twice every year. I read it during my, what I call preparation time at the beginning of the year, when I take time out to seek the Lord. It's always one of the books of the Bible that I read during my prayer and fasting season. And then I read it whenever it comes up in my normal through the Bible reading thing again. It's one of those books that I just love. I've read so many commentaries on it. I've read through it so many times. I've taught it at a bunch of men's retreats. I love this book. I love it for a lot of reasons. But I think I enjoy it mostly because of the man Nehemiah. And I believe that you and I, as we go through this for the next 13 weeks or so, you're going to enjoy it too, for the purposes of looking at this man. And let's see where the text goes and how God uses in this text, starting today. He uses a man to follow his plan. He uses a people to fulfill his word. And he uses a building project to cement a nation back together again. This is about so much more than just building a wall, as so many people teach it. It's about restoring community. It's about bringing back unity to a scattered group of people. And let's face it, the church world today is kind of scattered. Looking back at verses 1 through 3, getting back into the text, we read this. It says, the words of Nehemiah, the son of Hackalia. Now it happened in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, that I was in Susa, your books might say Shushan, the citadel. That Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. Now, Nehemiah lived in Shushan, or Susa, the capital city of the Persians. And he lived in the citadel. That is the fortified palace of the Persians. He lived in the king's castle. If you want to put it in younger terms, he lived where Beauty and the Beast lived. All right? I mean, he's at the best place of the best place, okay? Right away, we know then that Nehemiah is someone important, and he's living in the very palace of the king of Persia. Even though Nehemiah's body was in Persia, even though he was important there, his heart and his interest were in Jerusalem, 800 miles away, a place he had never been, okay? And because they were there, and that's where his heart and his interests were, He wanted to know from those returning how the people of the city were doing. We might think that an important person like Nehemiah had more important things to worry about and think about than some distant city that he'd never visited. But that's not his heart. His heart is pushed towards the things of God. His heart is for the people of God, which means his heart is not focused on himself. It's focused on others. The news he gets isn't really encouraging, is it? The people, called survivors, and not a hopeful title here, it's not survivors like they won the $1 million show, right? These people, these survivors, they're just making it. They're just getting by. They were in great trouble and shame, it says from our text. And the walls of the city itself were broken down, and the gates were destroyed by fire. The bad state of the people was expressed in the bad state of the city walls. They were intimately connected. And in the ancient world, that's the way it was. Without walls, the city was completely open and vulnerable to enemies. They had no defense. They had no protection at all. They were being robbed blind, raped, and killed at the enemy's will. What would you do? What would you do if you heard that people you were concerned about were hurting? What would you do if you had a heart that was focused on others and you heard of their trial and their distress? Let's see what Nehemiah does and see if it follows with what you would do. Verse 4. It says, "As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven." Now, Nehemiah's immediate reaction was more extreme than it seems right here. Literally, it means in the text that he fell to his knees, or he fell to sitting. He fell to the floor under the weight of the burden that he had just heard for the people that he was concerned about. You know, one of my jobs for these past few years has been to go around with the sheriff's department and the DPS and to go to people's doors and to knock on their door and to tell them your loved one's not coming home. You've probably seen it on TV shows or in movies. You see someone go to the door and they tell them, you know, maybe you want to take a seat. Well, the reason that you take a seat when you get that kind of information, because I've seen it up close and personal, is you give someone that type of news and their blood pressure either drops or rises, and they quite often pass out. Because the news is just so distressing, it causes them to faint and fall out. So he doesn't just feel bad for Jerusalem and its people right away. He's just hurting. There's no strength in his legs. He just falls out when he hears the news. And he begins to weep and he begins to mourn. God is going to use Nehemiah to do something that's going to be amazing. But before he's able to get him to do something, he's got to do something in Nehemiah. It's the same way with you and the same way with me. Talking about the survey results that we put out, some of you put these things, we need to do this and we need to do that. Let me just tell you right now, we sometimes means when you put it down, Pastor Dave and Pastor James need to do this. But if it's we, it means you, because God put that burden on your heart to do that ministry. And when God puts that kind of burden on your heart for others, it's others focused, you begin to have that kind of pain, and you begin to cry for them and their pains and their worries and their concerns. Surrounding us this summer will be latchkey kids. I was a latchkey kid. How many people were latchkey kids when you were growing up? Does anybody know what a latchkey kid is? Okay. A latchkey kid is a kid that you go home from school and you're at home until your parents get home, right? You have a key hanging around your neck at school. That's where the latchkey thing came from. You know, you usually got it like on a shoestring and you had it all school year long. And then in the summer, your parents would go to work in the morning, so you'd be home from 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 or 6 o'clock at night when they got home because both your parents worked. That was me my whole life, right? And so when, some of you are like, wow, that would be great. My mom's always home. I got a helicopter mom. I can't get anything done, But I'm telling you, it's not that great because you can get in all sorts of trouble and you can wind up having some really lonely days and some really terrifying days as a kid. Do you care about the kids in the neighborhood around us? Do you hear them? Do you know that probably 80 to 90% of them are doing that all summer long? God prepared this work that Nehemiah is going to do long ago. And he did it by putting Nehemiah in an important position, with a heart that was curious about the welfare of the people in Jerusalem, 800 miles away. They were his people. Now with a heart that breaks over their needy state, he says, I want to do something to make things better for them. God saw the need in heaven, but little would be done until the right man also felt the need. And now God is going to do something great to meet the need through this guy, Nehemiah. But there is no way that Nehemiah can do this alone. Like I said, we say we need to do this, and when we say we need to do this, it's not we need to do this, you or you. It's we need to do this as a body of believers, as a body of people. We need to feel the call, feel the burden of the Lord, and we need to come together and do it that way. There's no way he can do it alone. He must be a leader. He's got to be one who influences people to get this job done. But let me tell you something. Nehemiah, although it is a book about leadership, it's something we all obviously need today. We need leaders. But I got great news for you. You don't need to look any farther than the mirror. Because each and every one of us in this room has an influence on someone in our lives. Everyone is a leader in this room. So often we like to say, well, those leaders need to do this, and our people in Washington, and this and that. Hey, everything starts right here with you and I. It starts with us, right? Everyone has an area of leadership. You are a leader, and you are either a good leader or a bad leader. You have to decide. Now, there's certain things I'm a good leader in, and certain things I'm a bad leader in, right? And I know that. And you know as well. Leaders must prepare themselves for a difficult work. Nehemiah had a burden. He fell out and he continued fasting and praying to the God of heaven. It won't be easy, and he's realizing that. Alan Redpath, in his commentary on Nehemiah, wrote this. He said, there is no winning without warfare. There is no opportunity without opposition. There is no victory without vigilance. For whenever the people of God say, let us arise and build, Satan says, let me arise and oppose. So if there's anything good that you're doing in your life, chances are pretty good you're up against the wall doing it. That's just the way it is. Because the enemy is against that. We need to understand that. Leaders must have a big, big vision. And Nehemiah had one. He's basically saying, through me, God is going to correct a problem that has been around for 150 years. Through me, God is going to do something that has been completely shot down before by generation after generation. That's a big vision, right? People have been saying, oh, we're never going to be able to beat the opposition. We're never going to be able to get this wall built. We're just always going to be in this place of disgrace and shame. Is your vision, is your goal for you, for your family, for your church, for your community, for your world, is it big enough? Nehemiah's reaction went beyond an immediate emotion. For many days he mourned. For many days he fasted. For many days he prayed to the God of heaven. Many times a concern will come to us. We'll hear something in church. We'll see a commercial. You ever see those commercials of those poor starving kids somewhere? And you see the commercial, you're like, somebody's got to do something. I'm going to call. But then your TV show comes on and you're like, wait, I want to see who wins. And you forget about it. It comes with a flash and it goes with a flash. But a burden, something the Lord puts on our heart, it won't go. And I'm praying today that as I speak and as we talk about things, you'll get a burden that you can't shake. You're going to want to. Some of you are going to be like, no, not me. I'm doing it. But I'm praying that the Lord is going to be like, ain't going. You're stuck with it. It's a burden. And a good burden is a good thing to have. If it's from the Lord, it will abide. It will grow in us. And the burden will remain until the work is done. We should note as well that Nehemiah, what he did not do, he heard this, and he went to prayer right away. He went to the God of heaven right away. He had a clear understanding of whom he was fasting and praying towards, the God of heaven, the God who meets the needs of his people, not one of the many gods trusted by the people in Babylon. The one God, the one true God, our God, he goes to. And immediately, he did not say, oh, woe is me. He did not complain. He did not whine. And he didn't say who else there is, who's going to fix this problem. He realized the burden was his, and that meant he was part of the solution. He immediately did what he knew he could do, and he prayed intensely, seeking his God in the situation. And at this point, before we look at the prayer, we got to remind ourselves something about leadership. See, it's more than just a wall that's going to get built here. A man's going to be built. A community is going to be built. A unity is going to be built. And the reason it's going to be built that way is that because prayer is essential to leadership. He does the first thing, and it's the most important thing. What do I always say? Hey, first thing, a difficulty comes up, we should do what first? pray. Well, I asked for a service, and they're like, I don't know, well, And maybe you guys, we say pray, but how many of us actually pray first? I mean, let's be honest. Half of us have our sleeves rolled up, and we're halfway running down to fix the problem before we ever commit it to prayer, right? All you type A's out there, I know you, because I'm one, all right? But the truth of the matter is we should stop, pray, take the time necessary. That's what happens here in leadership. Prayer is, if prayer isn't absolutely necessary to accomplish our vision, then our goal just simply isn't big enough. It should be something that can only be accomplished by God and only be accomplished through prayer. It appears that Nehemiah prayed for 4 months before he did anything. Later, when the work actually comes, when they actually start rebuilding the wall, you know how long it takes? 52 days. It takes 52 days to build a wall that they couldn't build for 150 years. Okay? It takes 52 days. Why? It takes 52 days because Nehemiah took his pain and his stress to the Lord, and there was a 4-month foundation of prayer that was there before he ever started the work. That's important. Today I'm asking you to start praying about big things. Today I'm going to ask you and show you things and put them before you. I'm not asking you to come up right away and say, let's do it, unless the Lord has told you in this service to do it. But I'm asking you to pray. Because if you pray, then the burden will come from the Lord and it won't come from my lips. Nehemiah took his pain and his stress to God in prayer. It bothered him. And the only way to really relieve your stress and your pain is to pray. As we look at Nehemiah's prayer now in the following verses to the close, verse 11, we'll see 3 aspects of prayer that will help us deal with our burdens as they come and accomplish God's plan for us as He has designed. Going through verses 5 through 7 to start. And I said, this is his prayer, I went to the Lord in prayer and fasting for 40 days or more, 4 months actually. He began to pray like this. And I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love Him and keep His commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for the people of Israel, your servants, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Even I and my father's house have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, and the rules that you commanded your servant Moses. Great start to his prayer. The first thing that we see, the first thing about his prayer is that it starts with a heart of humility. Nehemiah comes to God in absolute and complete humility. Humility begins by simply understanding there's a God enthroned in heaven, and guess what? You're not Him. I mean, that's it. There's a God enthroned in heaven. He's in charge of everything. Nehemiah recognizes exactly who God is. He's the Lord God of heaven. He's a great and awesome God. He's a God who keeps His covenant, and He has a steadfast love for those who love Him. That's who God is. Humility also understands our complete dependence upon God. When Nehemiah desperately asked God to hear the prayer, he said it like this: be attentive, your eyes open, hear the prayer of your servant. He's like, God, please hear me on this. He realizes he's dependent upon God. Only God could help, and if God will only hear, Nehemiah realizes that He would help, and that's what's going on here. God will allow us, guys and gals, check this out, He'll allow us to be completely fruitless to expose us to our need of total dependence upon Him. Sometimes we'll launch out and go, I got this, and then God will let you fall flat on your face, and boy, don't I know the pain of that, right? Why? So that we realize we're fruitless apart from God. Fruitless. We have to be dependent upon Him. Humility says, I'm dependent upon God. Humility says, you are God, I'm not. Humility also identifies with the needy. Obviously, Nehemiah was a godly man, but he openly and passionately puts himself and his father's house, and he prays we instead of they when he prays about sin. I'm going to join in with everyone else. He openly confesses his sin, plainly, and confesses his sin without any attempt at excuses. Brothers and sisters, when you come and ask for prayer, and you say, I want you to pray with me, don't say, I want you to pray with me because my wife made me sin. Right? I want you to pray with me because my kids made me angry. Because see, your anger and your sin is yours. They didn't do it. There's too much victim mentality out there in the world today. We got to be able to go openly and immediately say, I'm at sin here. It's my fault that I feel this way or I've done this thing. We need to say we or me instead of they or him. Redpath also said this. He said, you never lighten the load unless you first have felt the pressure in your own soul. If we don't realize our own sin, we're never really going to be able to lighten our load or the loads of others, because only God can. You are never used of God to bring blessing until God has opened your eyes and made you see things as they are. First thing to go before the Lord is, God, you are God in heaven. You answer the prayers of your people. You are gracious and loving, and I'm not that great. And I realize that. That's the first thing. He comes in humility. Second thing we see in verses 8 through 10. Remember the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the peoples. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though your outcasts are in the uttermost parts of heaven, from there I will gather them and bring them to the place that I have chosen, to make my name dwell there. They are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. The second thing we see in this prayer is that Nehemiah comes to God looking to God's promises. In other words, God, you made promises, now you got to keep them. That's great. Remember. You know, God's all about remembering things. Do this in remembrance of me. Right? God loves it when we recall the scriptures to him and tell him, hey, I remember what your word says. I remember how your word made this promise to me. I remember how you met me in that time of prayer when I was down and beat and hurting. And I'm coming to you now and I'm saying, God, please remember the promise you made to me that's confirmed there in your scriptures. And God, please see it through. To ask God to remember his promises, Nehemiah says, Lord, you made a promise to Moses and to the nation. You said you'd scatter them if they didn't listen, but you bring them together if they did. And he's quoting Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 30. That's the secret, by the way, to great and powerful prayer. It's not to pray the best list of commands of God and tell him what to do for you. The secret to great and powerful prayer is to pray in accordance to what his word says. And to lean on his promises, not your desires. Many a time I've just went to him crying and moaning and said, Dad, you promised. I need you to show up and be Dad. I need you to do what you promised to do. Our Father in heaven delights in and often demands that we trust him enough to recount his promises to him before he'll really move on our part. God will not open his storehouse until we open our mouths in asking him to perform what he said he would. And that's how it works. Nehemiah quotes a conditional promise. The condition was returning to God. And listen, he's talking about people that have been outcast, downtrodden, and he doesn't even know, he's never even seen these people, he's never even been there. He doesn't know if they're really walking with God or not. They could be walking like heathens at this time. So how could he know the nation was keeping these conditions? He really couldn't. But he knew that he was keeping them. He knew that he was faithful, that he knew that he was following God. He hadn't identified himself, and because of that, he identified himself with those people that he wasn't sure of. You know, a lot of times people have to come to me and say, you know, I'm praying for my deadbeat husband or my wife, you know, and this and that, you know, this problem there, or my kid here, or my kid there, you know. They might not be doing so great, you know, but they're there, pray for them. Hey, you know what? If you lump yourself in with them, you carry them. You don't believe me? 1 Corinthians chapter 7. The believing spouse carries the unbelieving spouse before the Lord. The believing spouse carries the unbelieving children before the Lord. So you go and you say, we. You know, there's troubles in the house. It's not one person. It's we. My Father's house and I are not right with you. That's how it works. When we accept the burden and responsibility of the others that are lost and hurting around us, we get a whole new understanding of where they're at, and we come across as humble and caring, and things change. So often we pray for someone else to change. What we need to pray is, let us as a body, as a family, as a people, change. Lump yourself in and see how much your emotions change and how less you're against the person you were praying for before. He did that. To carry a burden, you have to be willing to carry the sinner or the lost along with you. You can't pray for them at a distance. You got to be right there, arm in arm. That's just the way it is. Far too many a marriage, far too many a relationship, far too many a friendship is destroyed because someone says, I've been praying for so long, I give up. I'm praying for them. I'm not praying for us. And we need to pray for us together as one. The third thing we see is in verse 11. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name, and give success to your servant today, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man. Now I was cupbearer to the king. Now, cupbearer to the king, that's not some throwaway position. Okay, it used to be the guy that would taste the food, and if he died, you know, don't eat the food. All right? But over years, that position went to slaves in the galley. It never actually happened up in the top, you know. By the time you became the cupbearer, you were someone who was there, always next to the king. You became a very trusted advisor. Nehemiah was a very trusted advisor. He was loved by the king, and the king had his ear, and he had the king's ear as well. You know, so it was really amazing what was going on there. But he prays, this third thing that he prays for is a heart that's ready to do something. Nehemiah lives in the king's palace, and he's ready to go back to a rubbled land and rebuild it. Nehemiah is trusted of the king, and he's willing to risk his life, we'll see this next week, by showing the king that his heart is sorrowful. Because in those days, if you were in the court of the king and your countenance had fallen, your head might fall right behind. He was willing to put it all on the line if God called him to do so. He asked God to bless him when he speaks to the king of Persia in this matter. Nehemiah was going to do something about the sorry state of Jerusalem, about its walls and about its people. And he knows without God's intervention, he can do nothing. He might not even live to see another day. This is a prayer of a man of action. This is not a sideline critic. This is not when someone that says, somebody should do that, someone should take care of that. This is someone that says, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take care of that in the strength of the Lord. Nehemiah does not pray, God, make it all better, or God, get someone else to move on this problem. Instead, he prays, God, use me to make it better. Like Isaiah, here am I, send me. That's what we see in Nehemiah. Now, is that your heart? I mean, I read the surveys. I saw what people think we need to do and what people say is important to them and what's desirous. Is your heart into those things, those answers that you gave? Or was it just sideline criticism? There's really no way to find out except to put some things out there and see what happens within this body of believers. Is your heart for your community, your church, and your world what those surveys showed us and said? Well, now it's time to put, so to speak, the rubber to the road. So let's talk about Survey Says. Our online survey went out there. We asked you guys for 6 weeks. Please, every man, woman, and child, get online, grab a paper one, fill it out, call us, whatever. We really want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. And we were expecting, praying, hopeful for 100 surveys. That would be 1/3 of the body of believers here at Calvary Chapel. 100 answers, 100 surveys. Because we wanted everybody to do them. We didn't care if 5 people in the same household did them, right? All right? We got 51 responses. Yeah. So here's the deal. 51 responses, that's kind of hard. You know, with a heart like Nehemiah, and that's what I want you to take chapter 1 into your heart for just a second. Let's think about this. Hopefully having been challenged by the man Nehemiah himself, a man whose heart was one of humility, a man who was looking to God and his promises, a man that was ready to do something if God opened a door or made a way. Looking at that and knowing that 51% of us answered a survey, let's look at the 4 things that were put forth in the survey as the most important things to us as a body of believers. Now, after first service, I had a bunch of people come to me and go, I didn't put any of those things down. Hopefully these ring true to you guys. Survey top 4. This is in order, by the way. Wednesday night meals, more community outreach, adult Sunday school, and having one service. Okay? Those are the 4 things that were really important to the body here at Calvary Chapel. Okay? Now, I'm kind of cracked up that Wednesday night meal was at the top, but then again, we are in East Texas, and you guys do like to have your potlucks. All right? 51 individuals actually answered the survey. That's roughly half of what we were hoping for. So we're still unsure of whether or not this is where we're supposed to go. So we have 2 proposals to meet these 4 top desires of the body. The board and I met on Wednesday last week, and we've done some work this week, and we're just going to kind of lay some things out before you and see what happens. Now, I'm hoping that with these two proposals, we as a body are going to get behind these ideas like Nehemiah did, ready to do something should God provide a way. If it's not that case, well, then we'll realize that we probably didn't get the right information that we needed. I hope we did, because as we're here today, maybe even some of us will get a tickling and a call. Proposal number 1. To cover our top 2 desires, Wednesday night meals and more community outreach, we have what I would call nothing short of a massive summer outreach planned. And when I say massive, I mean massive, okay? And there's a reason for it, and I'll go through it as we explain it. It will address the 2 issues that were the very most important to us, to those who responded to the survey. And I believe it gets us back into the business of being the Lord's business. You know what I mean? Of being about the Lord's business here in the community, instead of bearing the cup for kings of the world. And I think we sort of fell into that. All right? This summer outreach that we're planning, if it comes together, because that's based on us as a whole, will run Monday through Thursday for 11 weeks of the summer. That's 44 days if you were adding it up real quick. 43 actually, because one of those days is the 4th of July, and we're not going to do outreach on the 4th of July. We're going to shoot off fireworks and eat watermelon like everybody else. Okay? Here's the proposal on what will require from us as a church family. Wednesday night meals. Okay, we're going to have Wednesday night meals. It takes 4 volunteers to come here from the hours of 4 to 7 on Wednesday night to plan, prepare, and to serve a meal. Okay? What we're planning on doing is just being open. Now, we talked about this, and Pastor James and I just sort of had a disagreement trying to figure it out. This isn't a kitschy church thing, and this isn't a VBS, okay? I'm sick and I am so sick and tired of VBSs. I'm sorry, you know? And I'll tell you why. Because they're entertainment centers just based around town, and kids come to our when we have a VBS, kids will come here wearing the t-shirt from the last VBS, and they'll go to the next VBS wearing our t-shirt type of thing. You know what I mean? It's daycare, all right, for some parents. That's what it is. Those latchkey kids, they'll just take them around, drop them off wherever they can. VBS is a week long. You can't build much of a relationship in a week. You can build some, but not much. But in 11 weeks, what can you do with kids if you see them for 11 weeks? 11 weeks. What can you do with that? All we want to do is be open for a place for kids in this neighborhood around us to come and to play. They can shoot hoops, they can color, whatever. You know, whatever we have for those hours, they can just come. We would advertise that fact that we are open. We put it in the newspaper. We put it on 5,000 little glossy cards. We'd canvass the neighborhood and give them to every single door in this neighborhood. We put them in every single school before the schools let out. The schools let you do that, by the way. They let you tell them what you're doing during the summer, and they put it in a bag the kids take home with them the last day of school. Okay? 5,000. I want to put 5,000 things out and invite people to come here and hang out at our building, right? Now, our mission field is literally just a few feet away. And we've barely made inroads into there over the 8 years we've been here. I think that's what we need to do. We need to be reaching to the last and the left out in Mount Pleasant, and it's literally right behind us. Now, the reason it's so long is because we're going to use the summer to build relationships. The relationships that we pray will grow into members coming here. And more importantly, members of God's family as the gospel is portrayed to the people that are here. That's the whole idea. Rather than make it be cutesy for a few days, it's going to be a long-term relationship that we build over time. Included in this massive outreach will be pizza lunches on Thursdays. We're going to count heads of whoever's here. We're going to go out, we're going to buy pizza and drinks and bring it back here and feed everybody that's here on Thursday. Right? Some of these kids, by the way, are on food programs at the schools, and they don't eat much during the summer. One teacher told me that their students come back anywhere from 10 to 15 pounds lighter at the end of summer every year. Right? Because they don't get fed as much during the summer as they do during the school year, right? Because they've been on those programs. So we're going to do that, CC's or something. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to have Wednesday night dinners that entire time, right? Wednesday night dinner, and we're going to invite their families and the whole church body here. Why? So we can build relationships, and we can get the kids to hang out with our kids and play with our kids, and the adults can come and sit here and go through services, and we can develop relationships, right? So we're also going to have snacks every day of some sort, plus two big outreaches, two big community outreaches where we're going to take over Caldwell Park, which is right down here. At Caldwell Park, what we'd like to do is have a water park day in June towards the beginning. And at the very end, we want to have a movie. We've got a big screen. Show a movie outside and have hamburgers, hot dogs, popcorn, the whole bit. And just everybody can put down chairs and blankets on the lawn and watch some movie at Caldwell Park. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be a lot of fun. Our church family and the community around us all together just hanging out. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Two things we need from the body to move forward. First, there's a sign-up sheet out there in a book. I'm going to tell you right now, we need 75% of the slots filled. There's 6 people every single day needed, and there's 4 people every Wednesday night needed. All right? Now, check it out. You get 3 weeks. That's plenty of time. You get 3 weeks. You get until March 11th. If there's not 75% of those spots filled by March 11th, the thing's off. It's our decision. You get to help make it. It's off. If we're not going to volunteer and put in the effort to do it, then if we're not going to build the wall, we can't build the wall, right? It takes people to build the wall. Second thing about that is we estimate that it's going to cost about $15,000 to do this. Now, I'm up here telling you that it's going to cost about $15,000 to do this, and I can tell you that for the last 7 months, Pastor James and I have to wait into the second or third week of the month so that we can cash our paychecks. So I'm telling you, it ain't great. But it's doable. And I know it's doable. And I believe that if your vision isn't so big that God doesn't have to be in it and we don't pray to God for it, it's never going to happen. We have to have a bigger vision than just, hey, let's go to church and hang out. Right? Don't you think? So that's what this is about. We need to have, that's basically 3/4 of a month of operating costs just to cover our summer. Okay? 1 month's worth of operating costs, 3/4 of it, just to do that. So we need to see that come in the normal tithe as things build up. So if you feel that this is where we need to go, and you're one of those people in the survey that said that's what we need to do, which I believe we do, then we will know as a board just by seeing that list of sign-ups getting filled up and the offering going up. That's what we'll know, right? Here are some interwoven ideas so you can kind of play this out in your head as we have been for the last few weeks. The 4 people who make a meal, they could be connect groups. The elders are going to do a couple of those meals ourselves, right? And a family could do it as a ministry team. Hey, our whole family's going to do this one night's meal, as a family thing together type of thing. That's all. It could be the youth group. It could be a worship team, whatever. The church will buy the ingredients necessary unless that group decides, you know what, we just want to bless the church. We're going to buy them ourselves. But otherwise, you just give us a menu. We'll get you what you need. All right? And we'll have it. And we'll be ready for you. And the volunteers for playtime, check this out. We need 2 adults and 4 teens. Who love to do what? Well, it's fairly simple. All you need to do is like to play, like to befriend people, and to keep kids safe while they're here. That's it. Just be there. Just be visible. And each and every one of you is going to get a background check, so we need to know ahead of time, all right? Because we need to tell them we did that. And there's going to be waivers and things like that. There's a lot of work that goes to it, but we can make it happen, okay? That's the first proposal from the board to the body based on what you gave us as input from the survey, okay? We're just taking it and putting it back to you and letting us decide as a body, okay? Here's the next one. Number 2, we want adult Sunday school and 1 service. Raise your hand if you would like to have 1 service in this church. First service was kind of like, well, those second service people are loud. We're kind of quiet. No, they were fine with it too, all right? We can't all fit in this building if we're all here. It doesn't work. People have looked at it and said, well, there's a lot of empty seats. Well, there's not as many empty seats as there are people in both services if everybody shows up, right? We are kind of a hit and miss church, but we've had these days when there's no seats in here or very few, and then there's days when there's a lot. So we can't do that. People want adult Sunday school so that they can get together and spend more time together, and that requires, it requires a different building than the building we're in. But we can change this one, okay? And we're going to, if you want to. We had an engineer come here this week. Most exciting day for me in the last 10 years, okay? An engineer came here, and we walked through the building, and I'm like, and we could do this, and we could do that, and let's try this, and how about that? And then he started giving up other good things and great ideas. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. I'm going to give you 2 ideas and let you know the pros and the cons real quick, okay? One idea is to go down there into our gym and to build a mezzanine on this side of the court. You'd still be able to use it for basketball, volleyball, and all those things, but it would seat about 400 people on this side of the basketball court. Okay, there'd be an upstairs and a downstairs with stairs going up, and there'd be a sound booth there, and there'd be a stage that folds up into the wall on the other side. All right? And we would require us every single week setting out chairs and carpet on the ground and taking it up for other events. Okay? So it's extra work. It would take more volunteers. It's about a third the cost of Plan 2. But even though it takes volunteers and even though it's a third the cost, and we might say, well, let's just do it because it's cheaper, it might not fly with the city. We might not be able to get it done at all. Okay? Because it's an upstairs. And every time you start doing that kind of stuff, they might be like, we got this regulation and that. So it might not fly at all. We might not be able to do it. That's one idea. The engineer is going to give us plans for both, and we're going to talk to the city about when time comes. Here's the other idea. The other idea, much more expensive, but much more churchy, okay? Picture that wall 35 feet that way, okay? Picture your chair facing this way, a big long stage there, and check this out. Included in that big long stage, 2 nice screens, a big screen in the back, and, are you ready for this? A baptismal font buried into the stage. So you can pull off the stage and we can dunk people. Right? Isn't that cool? If you're going to dream big, if you're going to have a vision, it should be so big we want God to fulfill it, right? And although I am very partial to that wonderful horse trough that we've hauled around for 10 years, I think that would be pretty cool. Right? It'd be modern, it'd be a nice setup, it'd look better for people's weddings and things like that. We drop the ceiling, do some cool things, and really make it pretty spectacular in here, okay? A little more expensive, okay? Now, with either one of those, there will come a time when we won't have enough room for children's ministry classrooms because we're going to grow. Down there, we can seat 600 to 700 people in the gym. Down here, we can seat 550 or more down here facing this way. If we put it down there in the gym and do all that work, this will be children's ministry. This is where they'll do their Sunday church for the kids, and we're going to gut the floor, and we're going to put down, we're going to sand it, we're going to stain it, we're going to seal it, because that's perfect for kids, right? And maybe draw a little Awana mat on the floor so it's there all the time. We can just have it. Put some dividers up, and we can use it for separate classrooms or what have you. That gives us the ability to do adult Sunday school and to have one service. Okay? If either one of those, if we get to a certain place, there's behind us 150 feet by 30 feet of space. Not really big, but we can build five classrooms downstairs in a 2-story building that we could expand to 2 stories and have 10 classrooms should the Lord continue to grow us. On this footprint, we can have a church that will seat 600 to 700 people and have classroom space for enough adult Sunday school and children's church classes to have that. Now, somebody asked me, well, if you have adult Sunday school at 9 o'clock and church at 10:15, we can all be together, that's great, but what about Sunday school teachers? What about the people that are teaching the kids? I'm going to tell you this. My deal for that is there will be a class for anybody that's teaching Sunday school for kids or doing children's church, and I will teach the study to that class, sitting down with coffee and donuts or whatever, at that 9 o'clock. That will be my Sunday school. So I will teach what's going to be taught so you won't miss it, and we'll be able to do it face-to-face, and then you can still go serve the kids in the next service. Cool? That's a little bit about that. Okay, so both of those would probably require some other work. So, that's what would all this require from the body? Is kind of how we have to look at it, right? So, here it is. The 2 things I need you to do is first show your support for Sunday school classes by talking to Craig Pruitt. He's not here this service, but he'll be here next week. He was here first service. How many people know who Craig Pruitt is? Raise your hand if you know who Craig Pruitt is. Okay, if you see somebody that raises their hand next to you and you don't know who he is, say, who's Craig Pruitt, and they'll tell you, all right? Talk to Craig Pruitt. Let him know that you support Sunday school, that you're into having connect groups on Sunday morning instead of going somewhere Sunday night or during the week, and that you really like to see that. Tell him that you're also in support of a single service Sunday. Second thing, as with proposal 1, what do you think? What do you think? Come on. Green, right? It takes some green, all right? It's just the way it is. Unfortunately, as much as they say it doesn't, money does make the world go around in some places, okay? The board is okay, and when I say this, the board is really not okay, but I'm saying it anyway. The board is okay with extending the debt that this church has. I'm going to tell you right now, $575,000 is what we owe the world. Now, before you freak out and fall out and pass out, okay, the building that you're standing in today is worth $1.16 million. It was just appraised not too long ago. Right? So we have a little upend there. We don't like to get in debt. And right now, because we can barely pay the bills we have now, we really don't want to get in debt. But if we saw that there was enough funds coming in and we saw that things were growing and going the right direction, they'd probably feel a little more comfortable about this. Right now, I will be brutally honest with you. This entire endeavor is on my dime. Okay? I mean, literally, I'm the only personal guarantor on the church's loan right now. That will change someday, soon, I hope. Right? But because of the way things grew over the time, it's my signature and my signature alone. So if this thing goes south, then you'll see me and my family moving into this building because we won't have anywhere else to live. Okay? So I'm just telling you, start to see all of our cars out front, you know what happened, all right? Okay? So, there's proposal 1 and 2 for you. It's taking a little bit longer today, and I'm sorry, but we got to get these things done. It's kind of like business meeting / church. Proposal number 3. This is just for me personally. The wall building and the cementing together of the culture and the saving, those around them that were in need, that's what we should be about. But we need to come together as a community as well. This church is not as close and as tight as it should be. Right? Now, we had a question on there. And we asked you, hey, are you as involved in the church as you would like to be? There was 3 answers. There was no, or there was yes, as involved as I want to be. That was like 47% of you. There was no, the church did not reach out to me well enough. That was 2% of you. The rest of you, 51% or whatever, said, I could be more involved, but it's just on me. Basically, is what they said, okay? That's the 3 questions. I just haven't taken advantage of the opportunities given out there. So, there's this thing called the Pray.com app. Did you guys see the little blurb I put out this week? It was put out on our social media, the email loop and all that stuff, and it'll come out again this week. There's this app called Pray.com app. All you got to do is give me your contact information, a phone number, an email address, and let me put you in my phone, and I can send you an invite, okay? Because right now, any of the board members could do it, but you can give it to me or Pastor James, and I'll make sure it gets done. Right now, there's 16 people on our Pray.com app. There's a few more people than that in this church. Okay? Why would I want another app? Why do I need another technological thing? You know what this is? It's Facebook for the church and the church alone. It's only us contacting one another. And there's cool things about it. The icon is there. It's a little P with a little heart next to it. You can message people directly, chat with someone, anybody in the church that you want to, back and forth, just you and somebody else in the church. Okay? You can set up groups in here. All right, the groups on the far side, that's a group that I set up. It's the elders. All the elders can contact each other by just sending one thing to the group. So imagine if you're in a Connect group and you had everybody in your Connect group on one little group, you could connect to everybody that goes to your home fellowship and say, hey, I want you to know what's going on tonight, or we're not having it tonight, someone's sick, or hey, we're going to someone else's house, or hey, why don't you, can anybody bring chips? Whatever, you can connect to your group. The worship team can contact each other. The youth group can contact the whole group at one time. The good thing about this is you can put on there your prayer request that you want the whole body to reach, and you don't have to keep calling me and saying, hey, can you put up, Bertha on the prayer list, because we got to pray for Bertha's bursitis. You don't have to do that. Now, how many of you asked me, somebody asked me, I think it was 2 or 3 people asked in the survey, and I'm just going to clarify this so you understand. Do you all understand why we cannot put last names on a prayer request that we put out in an email? Does anybody know what the legalities of that are? It's against the law, and I can get in serious trouble. There's a thing called HIPAA, okay? You can't talk about someone's medical condition, even with their approval, if you use their first and last name on something like an email loop. Okay? So somebody asked me, I get it asked once every few months, and it showed up on the survey, why are there no last names on there? This is my answer. I think God knows their last name. Right? So just pray for whoever it is. But you can put your prayer request out there, and you're deciding what goes out there. You're deciding exact verbiage you use, exactly what's told. Because a couple times people have told me something, I'm like, okay, well, what part can I tell them, what part can I not? And I have to kind of decipher all that before we can send out an email. You can just do it. And you can just send it to one person, you can send it to 10 people, you can send it to your group, your home fellowship, or the whole stinking church. It doesn't matter, right? So it's a way for us all to be connected together in one place. If we do this summer outreach, it's a way that we can put the entire summer outreach team in there and send out something going, bleep, we need one person because someone's not going to be here tomorrow. Can someone fill in a spot? See how cool that would be? That kind of thing is great. It helps us to stay connected. Just us. It's an invite thing. Just us. Just us, not the whole entire eastern seaboard, western seaboard, or everybody who's a busybody in Mount Pleasant, Texas. Okay? Just us. Okay? So it's got that, and it's got one more thing in it, which I love. It's got giving. All right? One of our elders tried that this week. It takes a few days to show up, but it does work. You can just go right in there, set it up, click on there, yeah, I want to give. Okay? And you can send money. You know, say you just had a day and you listened to a study on the internet or something, like, oh, I really like that study. I think I'm just going to give a little bit because I have a few extra bucks in my account. Boom, you can do it, and you can kind of bless the church that way. You can do it for the outreach or what have you, and you can set it up to do recurring. So that's that. All right. Now, what kind of a leader would I be if I didn't pony up myself, right? Now, there was a big debate this morning, and those numbers were there, but then someone told me, no, don't show the numbers, cover them up, so we covered them up, okay? But here's the deal. I am not going to ask this body to even prayerfully consider doing anything that I would not do myself. And I'm going to tell you something, not to toot my own horn or anything like that, and I want you to understand the spirit in which this is given. Since the day this church has started, I have given 10% to the work of God at Calvary Chapel, Mount Pleasant, day one. Since a few months after I got saved, it's been that way. I believe it to be an obedience thing that people should do and are supposed to do according to the Word of God. All right? That's just my deal, okay? It might not be your deal, and that's fine. But I gave to Pastor James this morning 2 checks. My tithe check for the month of March and another check equal to my tithe check for the month of March, just for this outreach purposes. I'm putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak. And I'm asking you guys to consider doing the same. Now, you might not be able to do what the Anderson family did. You might say, that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. It might not be feasible for some of us in here. And I'm not asking you, and the board isn't asking you, or anyone even remotely doing anything like that. All I'm asking you to do is to do what God expressly tells you to do. That's it. Okay? The survey told us that a certain percentage gives to other things, and doesn't, apparently because they don't think the church is good with money or something, I don't know. They're like, I give as the Lord leads, or I give to other people, but I don't give to the church, this and that. That's fine, sort of. I mean, there's a work to be done. There's the people that need to be reached, and if you're behind this, then I think you should be part of it, even if it's to a small extent. Even, we make the guys pay for men's dinner. It's all pretty much donated. Why do we make the guys pay for men's dinner? Because they'll come if they're invested. And you'll be more invested in the work if you put your money where your mouth is too. That's just the deal with me, okay? For some in here, it might be that you've never given to this work at all before, but these things sound appealing to you, and you'd like to see a wall knocked out, and you'd like to see us reach out to the neighborhood. Maybe you'll start giving something monthly, all right? And that'll help. For some in here, it might not have anything to do with you giving anything. You might just say, or not monthly, just a certain amount. I just feel like the Lord called me to, I got this bonus from work, and I'm going to give part of that to the work, or to what's going on here. Or I'm just going to volunteer more, because I usually don't volunteer for anything. I never do anything. I just kind of sit back and take advantage. Now I'm going to get involved, okay? Something like that. All we're asking as a board, and I'm sure that you get this, and I want you to know, is that you commit the burden that people expressed they had to prayer before the Lord. You take the burden, the thing, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, and you take it before the Lord, and you do what the Lord tells you to do. Because we'll know as a board. We'll be able to figure out and decide. All we ask is that you commit this to the Lord in prayer, the way, your concerns for the city and the people. You guys worded them so well in the survey. I just want to see it happen. All we're asking is a humble prayer, looking to a God who fulfills all His promises and keeps all His promises, the God of promises, that should He call upon you, should He open up doors for you, that you would walk through those doors like Nehemiah will in the book we're going to study. Just respond to what God's doing. That's what it's really all about. That's what Nehemiah did, and amazing things happened. Okay, that's a lot to think about, is it not? It's a lot to pray about. And probably the best thing we can do is close just praying about it. Amen? Let's pray.